I came home early from work and found my perfect wife of 8 years in our living room with another man. But instead of confronting her, I decided to play the long game. Over the next month, I discovered she had been having affairs for our entire marriage, while secretly taking birth control and mocking my devotion behind my back. What I did next didn't just end our marriage, it completely destroyed her life. My name is James, and I want to tell you how I discovered that my perfect wife of 8 years had been living a double life, and how I orchestrated the most satisfying revenge imaginable while she had no idea what was coming. It all started on a rainy Thursday evening in September, when I came home early from my job as a software engineer. I had been feeling under the weather and decided to leave the office at 3 p.m. instead of my usual 6 p.m. As I pulled into our driveway in suburban Portland, I noticed an unfamiliar black BMW parked across the street. My wife Rachel's car was in the garage, which was normal since she worked from home as a freelance graphic designer. What wasn't normal was hearing voices and laughter coming from our living room as I quietly entered through the side door that led directly to our kitchen. I froze when I heard Rachel's voice, followed by a man's deep laughter. My first thought was that she might be meeting with a client, but something about the intimate tone of their conversation made my stomach clench with dread. "You're terrible," I heard Rachel say, followed by more laughter. "What if James comes home early?" "Then we'll tell him I'm here about the Johnson marketing project," the man replied smoothly. "Besides, you said he never comes home before 6. My blood turned to ice. I crept closer to the living room, staying hidden behind the kitchen wall, and peered around the corner. What I saw shattered my world, Rachel. My wife of 8 years was sitting on our couch with a man I didn't recognize. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, definitely not work attire, and they were sitting much closer than any professional relationship would warrant. As I watched, the man leaned over and kissed her, and she responded eagerly. I felt like I was going to be sick. This was Rachel, the woman who brought me coffee in bed every morning, who made my lunch and left little love notes in my briefcase, who always seemed so devoted and traditional. We had been trying to have children for 2 years, and she had always insisted that family was the most important thing in her life. I quietly backed away and left the house, driving around for 2 hours trying to process what I had seen. Part of me wanted to burst back in and confront them immediately, but a cooler part of my mind was already working on a different plan. When I finally returned home at my usual time, Rachel greeted me at the door with her typical warm smile and loving kiss. "Hi, honey, how was your day?" she asked, straightening my tie like she always did. "It was fine," I replied, studying her face for any sign of guilt or nervousness. There was none. She was a perfect actress. "I made your favorite chicken parmesan," she said, leading me to the dining room where candles were lit and the table was set beautifully as we ate dinner. Rachel chatted about her day, telling me about various design projects she was working on. She mentioned nothing about any visitors or meetings. She was lying effortlessly, and it was clear this wasn't her first time. "How's the Johnson project coming along?" I asked casually, remembering the man's comment about using that as a cover story. Rachel didn't even blink. "That one's going really well. The client loves the initial concepts. I should have the final designs ready by next week." The ease with which she lied was almost as shocking as the affair itself. That night, as Rachel slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake planning my next moves. I could have confronted her immediately, but I realized I needed more information. How long had this been going on? Who was this man? Were there others? And most importantly, how could I protect myself in what would inevitably be a messy divorce? Dead. Next morning, I called in sick to work and went to see a private investigator named Tony Morrison that a colleague had recommended during his own divorce proceedings. Tony was a former police detective in his 50s, with the kind of weathered face that had seen everything. "I need you to investigate my wife," I told him, explaining what I had witnessed. "How long do you want me to follow her?" Tony asked. "Long as it takes to get the full picture. I need to know everything." "That could get expensive," he warned. "Money isn't an object. I need ironclad evidence." Tony nodded. "Most affairs aren't isolated incidents. She's cheating now. She's probably been cheating for a while. We'll find out." Over the next 3 weeks, Tony provided me with daily reports that painted a devastating picture of my wife's secret life. The man I had seen was named Derek Matthews, a 35-year-old marketing executive who was also married with 2 young children. Rachel and Derek had been having an affair for over 18 months. But that wasn't the worst of it. Tony discovered that Derek wasn't Rachel's first affair. Over our 8 years of marriage, she had been involved with at least 4 different men that he could document. There was her yoga instructor 2 years ago, a client from 3 years ago, her college roommate's husband during a weekend trip I couldn't attend, and now Derek. Each affair had followed a similar pattern. Rachel would create elaborate cover stories, often involving fake work projects or fictitious girlfriends she was supposedly spending time with. She had become a master manipulator, carefully managing her schedule to ensure I never suspected anything. The most damaging evidence came from text messages Tony was able to retrieve. Rachel had been incredibly careless with her digital communications, apparently believing that I was too trusting or too stupid to ever check up on her. The messages with Derek were particularly revealing. James is working late again tonight. Want to come over, Rachel? On my way. Did you tell him about the business trip next weekend? Derek, he bought it completely. Sometimes I think he's the most naive man on earth. Rachel, that's what makes this so easy. He worships you. Derek, I know. It's actually kind of pathetic how much he trusts me. Rachel, reading those messages, felt like being stabbed in the heart repeatedly. The woman I had loved and trusted completely had not only been cheating on me for years, but was actively mocking my devotion to her. But the message that truly broke me was one Rachel had sent to Derek just 2 weeks earlier. James keeps talking about starting a family. I keep pretending I want kids with him, but honestly, the thought makes me sick. Can you imagine being tied to him forever with children? At least this way I can leave whenever I want. Rachel, for 2 years, I had been going to fertility doctors, taking supplements, timing everything perfectly, believing that we were partners in trying to create a family. The entire time, Rachel had been secretly taking birth control and laughing at my efforts. Tony also discovered that Rachel had been skimming money from our joint accounts to fund her affairs. She had spent thousands of dollars on lingerie, dinners, and hotel rooms that she had never used with me. She had even taken a weekend trip to Napa Valley with Derek, telling me she was attending a design conference armed with this devastating evidence. I consulted with Margaret Chen, one of the top divorce attorneys in the city. Margaret was a sharp woman in her 40s with a reputation for being ruthless when her clients had been wronged. This is one of the clearest cases of adultery I've seen, Margaret said, after reviewing Tony's evidence. With documentation of multiple affairs and financial infidelity, we can pursue full restitution of marital assets. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means that given her conduct, we can argue that she should receive minimal support in the divorce settlement. The documented affairs and financial deception will work heavily in your favor. How long will it take? With evidence this solid, we can probably resolve everything within 6 months. The key is maintaining the element of surprise. Don't let her know you're aware of anything until we're ready to file. For the next month, I continued playing the role of the loving, naive husband while secretly preparing for war. I opened new bank accounts in my name only, moved half of our joint savings into secure accounts, and began documenting all of our assets. I also started recording conversations with Rachel, legally, and with Margaret's guidance, to capture more lies. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Rachel continued her affairs, continued lying to my face, and continued treating me like a fool who was lucky to have her. Every kiss felt like a betrayal. Every I love you felt like mockery. But I had a plan, and I was patient. The breaking point came when Rachel announced that she needed to go on another business trip, this time to Seattle for a major client presentation. Such short notice, honey, but this client could be huge for my business, she explained, packing her suitcase with new lingerie I had never seen. How long will you be gone? I asked. Just the weekend. I'll be back Sunday evening. Tony had already confirmed that Derek had told his wife he was going to a marketing conference in Seattle the same weekend. They weren't even trying to be creative with their lies anymore. I'll miss you, I said, giving Rachel a kiss goodbye. I'll miss you too, baby. I'll call you every night. As soon as she left, I put my plan into motion. I had arranged for Tony to follow them to Seattle and document everything. While they were gone, I had locksmiths change all the locks on our house. I moved all of Rachel's belongings into storage, units that I paid for 6 months in advance. I also had divorce papers prepared and ready to serve, but the masterstroke was what I did with Rachel's business. Through my own investigation, I had discovered that several of Rachel's supposed clients over the years had actually been men she was having affairs with. She had been using fake business projects as cover for her infidelity. But she had also been claiming these fake projects as business expenses on our taxes. I compiled all of this information and sent it to the IRS, along with documentation showing that Rachel had been fraudulently claiming personal expenses related to her affairs as business deductions. Tax fraud carries serious penalties, and I wanted to make sure Rachel faced consequences beyond just divorce. On Sunday evening, Rachel returned from her business trip to find that her key no longer worked in our front door. When she called me, confused and angry, I was ready. "James, what's going on?" "Why don't my keys work?" "Because you don't live here anymore, Rachel." There was a long silence. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Derek Matthews. I'm talking about your 18-month affair with him and all the other affairs before him. I'm talking about the fact that you've been living a double life and treating me like a fool for years." I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "James, I don't know what don't." I cut her off. "I have pictures, Rachel. I have text messages. I have hotel receipts and credit card statements. I have documentation of every lie you've told me for the past 8 years. Another long silence. "Where are my things?" she asked, her voice now cold and calculating rather than confused. "In storage. The address is 42nd and Morrison, Unit 247. You have 6 months paid in advance. You can't just kick me out of my own house." "Actually, I can. The house is in my name only, remember? You insisted on that when we bought it because you wanted to keep your credit separate for your business?" That had been Rachel's idea 3 years ago when we bought the house. She had convinced me that keeping the house solely in my name would be better for tax purposes and her freelance business credit. Now I realized she had probably been planning an exit strategy even then. "This is insane, James. We can work this out." "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain, Rachel. I know everything. I know about Derek, about the yoga instructor, about all of them. I know you've been taking birth control while pretending we were trying to have children. I know you've been stealing money from our accounts to fund your affairs." I could hear her starting to cry, but I felt nothing. The woman I had loved was gone, if she had ever existed at all. "I filed for divorce," I continued. "You'll be served with papers tomorrow. My attorney will be in touch with yours. James, please, let's talk about this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. The only mistake I made was trusting you. There's nothing to fix, Rachel. It's over." I hung up and blocked her number. The next few months were brutal, but satisfying. Rachel hired an expensive attorney and tried to fight for half of our assets, claiming that her affairs were separate issues. From the financial aspects of our marriage, Margaret destroyed those arguments systematically. "Your Honor," Margaret said during one hearing, "the defendant has engaged in a pattern of financial fraud, using marital funds to conduct multiple extramarital affairs over several years. She has stolen from joint accounts, lied about business expenses, and violated her marital obligations in the most fundamental way possible." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was clearly disgusted by the evidence of Rachel's behavior. "Mrs. Williams," she said, addressing Rachel directly, "I have rarely seen such a clear pattern of marital misconduct. Your actions have not only violated your marriage vows, but appear to constitute financial fraud. In the end, Rachel received almost nothing. We kept the house, the majority of our savings, and my retirement accounts. She was ordered to pay back the money she had stolen from our joint accounts, plus interest. The judge also ordered her to pay my attorney's fees, ruling that her misconduct had necessitated the expensive divorce proceedings. But the real satisfaction came. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, the IRS audit I had triggered resulted in Rachel owing over $50,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest for fraudulent business deductions. She was also facing potential criminal charges for tax fraud. Meanwhile, Derek's wife had discovered their affair during the divorce proceedings and divorced him, taking half of his assets and primary custody of their children. His marketing career also suffered when his company learned about his conduct, and he was forced to take a much lower-paying job. The affair that had seemed so exciting and risk-free had cost both Rachel and Derek everything. I heard through mutual friends that Rachel had to move back in with her parents and was struggling to rebuild her design business with her ruined reputation. Several of her former clients had dropped her once word got out about her personal conduct, and she was having trouble finding new business. As for me, the divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I met Sarah, a veterinarian who shared my love of hiking and cooking. Sarah was honest, straightforward, and incapable of the kind of manipulation that Rachel had specialized in. When Sarah said she loved me, I believed her because her actions matched her words consistently. We took our relationship slowly, both of us having been hurt before, but every day with Sarah reinforced that she was everything Rachel had pretended to be: loyal, honest, and genuinely caring. 2 years later, Sarah and I got married in a small ceremony surrounded by people who truly loved and supported us. Unlike my first marriage, which had been built on lies and manipulation, this relationship was founded on mutual respect and genuine partnership. A year after that, Sarah and I welcomed our first child, a beautiful daughter named Emma, holding my daughter for the first time. I realized that Rachel had actually done me the greatest favor of my life by showing me who she really was. If we had stayed together and had children, I would have been trapped in a loveless marriage with a woman who viewed me with contempt. Instead, I got to experience real love and real partnership with Sarah, and I got to become a father with someone who genuinely wanted to build a family with me. The most satisfying moment came 3 years after the divorce, when I ran into Rachel at a coffee shop downtown. She looked tired and worn down, clearly still struggling with the consequences of her choices. "James," she said nervously when she saw me. "How are you?" "Doing very well, Rachel." "How are things with you?" She forced a smile. Good. I'm rebuilding my business slowly. That's good to hear." I paused, then decided to share my news. "I got remarried last year. We just had a baby." Rachel's face went pale. "Oh, congratulations." "Thank you." Her name is Emma, and she's perfect. I pulled out my phone to show her a picture. Sarah and I are really happy. Rachel looked at the photo of my beautiful wife and daughter, and I could see the realization dawning in her eyes. While she had been struggling with the consequences of her choices, I had found everything she had prevented me from having during our marriage. "She's beautiful," Rachel said quietly. "Yes, she is. And Sarah is an amazing mother. We're very blessed." As I walked away from that encounter, I reflected on how perfectly everything had worked out. Rachel had thought she was so clever, managing multiple affairs while keeping me as a stable foundation. She had believed she could have excitement on the side while maintaining security at home. Instead, her greed and selfishness had cost her everything. She lost a husband who had genuinely loved her, a comfortable lifestyle, financial security, and her reputation. Meanwhile, I had gained clarity about what real love looked like and found a partner who actually deserved my devotion today. Today, as I watch Sarah read bedtime stories to Emma, I sometimes think about the 8 years I wasted with Rachel. But then I realized those years weren't wasted. They were preparation. They taught me to recognize authentic love when I found it, and they showed me exactly what I didn't want in a marriage. Rachel is still single, as far as I know, still looking for whatever it was she thought she was missing in our marriage. Last I heard, was paying hefty alimony and child support while living in a small apartment and trying to rebuild his career. As for me, I found everything I was looking for right here at home with Sarah and Emma, with another baby on the way. Real love doesn't require deception or manipulation. It doesn't need to be hidden or explained away. It's honest, supportive, and grows stronger over time instead of requiring constant novelty to survive. The woman who thought she could play me for a fool ended up playing herself. I couldn't be more grateful for the lesson she taught me. Even if she didn't mean to teach it, sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best outcome. Rachel's lies freed me to find the truth, and that truth turned out to be more beautiful than any lie she ever told.